I want to invite you to 2 Corinthians chapter number 4. I want to lift the last two verses of the chapter for our reading today. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses number 17 and 18. When you have it, will you let me know with amen? 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses number 17 and 18. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Help the Holy Spirit today. I want to tag this text with this thought: more than what meets the eye. More than what meets the eye. My father thought he was some sort of Heathcliff Huxtable type of father. He would somehow or another concoct plans or strategies or ideas. And when my brothers and I or my mother would notice that he was up to something, and we would ask about it, he would instruct my brothers and I to stay out of grown folks' business. That he was doing something, and typically these plans would lead to some sort of lifelong memory we would not forget, because he was working on stuff that we could not see, comprehend, or understand in the moments. And we were forced to trust that whatever he was doing was going to work out in a way that would lead to our enjoyment, fulfillment, and greater good. The capacity to trust in your Father, to know that whatever he's planning is working out without you having to work on it. Friends, lean in close. Here's the sermon in a sentence. God is working it out without you needing to work on it. So instead of trying to help God out, change your focus. Here is the sermon in a sentence. God's doing it. So while God's doing it, you need to change your perspective. God does not need your assistance. He is only asking for your attention. Allow me to prove it in the text. The Apostle Paul is writing this letter to the church at Corinth, and this chapter in particular has a thematic emphasis on the simultaneous presence of trouble and promise for change. Simultaneously, Paul is telling these Corinthian believers that whether you want to believe it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you plan for it or not, whether you prefer it or not, trouble's coming. And it is the type of trouble that is in your face and present that you see, and you got to live it out. No, I'm going to get a lot of amens right here, because we prefer a type of faith that causes us to avoid the uncomfortable. We prefer the type of faith that allows us to excuse ourselves from hardship. We prefer the type of faith that promises, if I clap 3 times, turn around in circles, and run up and down the aisle, then I will be able to avoid turmoil and challenge. But Paul makes it clear, friends, that there is some real trouble. It's coming your way. If anybody knows about real trouble, it's Brother Paul. Brother Paul, who was once on the road to religious elitism and is now in the middle of being public enemy number 1. This is Paul, who knows about trouble. He knows about enduring religious manipulation. This is Paul, who knows about being abandoned. This is Paul, who knows about being stoned and left for dead. This is Paul, who knows what it's like to go days without eating. This is Paul, who knows what it's like to have people betray him and turn their backs on him. This is Paul, who knows what it feels like to have people walk away. And Paul says, whether you like it or not, this just part of the journey. You don't get to run from it. You do not get to hide from it. There is trouble. Everywhere you go, there is trouble. It is present danger that you see. Nestled within the confines of 2 Corinthians chapter 4 is not just the promise of problems that you can see. There is the promise of help that you cannot see. I'm preaching and y'all not talking to me. Let me help you. Whether you want to believe it or not, you will be able to see the weapons form. You will be able to see the negative things that take place in your life. You will have to live out real challenges and real experience. You will see that your bank account is depleted. You will see people walk away. You will see hardship, and you gotta trust that the help ain't always gonna come in a form that you can see. Lord have mercy. Let me try it this way. You gotta see trouble, but you can't always see where the salvation's coming from with your natural eye. So here's how Paul decides to encourage believers. He decides to encourage you by saying, here's what you need to know, friends. You're going to endure affliction. You're going to endure it. But look at what the text says. What you're enduring don't feel good to you, but look at what the text says verbatim. It's working for you. Here it is. The trouble that you see actually has a job. You see it? It's working to produce something for us. And here's what you got to know. Come here. God is employing the trouble that you see to produce a glory you can't. Let me try it again. God has hired your affliction to work to make a glory for you that you can't see. You can see the trouble, you cannot see the glory. And you gotta trust that God has employed the trouble to produce a glory for you that shall be revealed. Are you tracking with me in the text? These two verses are loaded with both challenge and promise that there is affliction and there is glory, and one doesn't get to be absent from the other. Lean in close. There is affliction and glory, and they don't get to be absent from each other. So you don't get the glory without the affliction, because the affliction is what produces the glory that in God's chemical laboratory of redemption, he cannot produce the glory without the affliction. Romans 8, all things work together. That word work together in the Greek is where we get our English word synergy from. It requires forces that typically don't go in the same direction to come together to produce something that works. And what I'm trying to tell you is you don't get glory without affliction. Herein lies the challenge. I wish y'all would be honest. The challenge is, it's hard to celebrate what God is doing when you can only see what's happening to you. Can we be honest? You don't get to negate your real experience and overlook it just to shout about stuff that you don't even, let's be honest, you're not even convinced that God's gonna do it. All right, y'all so self-righteous you can't be honest. There have been times in your life that you're not even sure if God's gonna do what he said he's gonna do, because all you see is what you see. God promised to supply your needs, but they still sending these letters in the mail and calling your phone from these strange numbers. And they got your email address. You cannot see it because all you see is what you can see. So Paul says, stop looking at what's seen, because there's more to see than what you see with your eyes. No. Let me try to make it real for you. Sometimes I thank God that I was born when I was born. There are other times I feel like I was born 30 years too late, neither here nor there. No, listen, anyway. But there, I got to thank God that I was born when I was born, because I am part of the last generation with real cartoons that meant something. You know what I'm saying? I'm part of the last. I know conjunction, junction, what's your function? It ended after me. You understand what I'm saying? It might have started with y'all, but it ended. I got to see it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, But more than anything, I am of the generation that had the greatest Disney movies of all time. I know y'all watch these little Disney movies now. They cute, they cool, whatever. I'm from the GOAT era. The greatest Disney movies of all time era. Y'all don't get me to call in the roll. We can debate about this later, but my era had the greatest movies because we had a list of them, including the greatest one of all time. Argue with your mama. The Lion King. You argue amongst yourselves at brunch, but as for me in my house, The Lion King is the greatest. I know I'm right about it. I don't need your amen right there. I know I'm right about it. Y'all know it follows Simba, a young cub who runs away from Pride Rock after the death of Mufasa, carrying the weight of his own mistakes, thinking that he can outrun his past, only to discover that you got to deal with it eventually. Somebody needs to learn a lesson from Simba today. You gonna have to deal with it. And ain't enough Hakuna Matatas to keep you from having to deal with the weight of your past. You can Hakuna Matata, but you need to go to therapy. I'm sorry. Let me get to the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, y'all remember when Simba comes to the pivotal moment where Timon and Pumbaa are gone, Nala has come and gone, he is left by himself dealing with the weight of his mistakes. When my favorite character, the sage Rafiki, shows up, singing a little song to tell Simba that Simba is the baboon. You're the fool. Tell Simba, I know your father. And he ain't dead, he's alive. Follow me, I'm gonna take you to him. And they run through the jungle, through the trees. Simba ends up at a body of water. Y'all remember this? And Rafiki troubles the water. Because sometimes clarity requires trouble. No. And Simba looks into the water and only sees himself, calls it a reflection. And do you know what Rafiki told Simba? Look harder. Look harder. Because there's some stuff you cannot see with your natural eye. You gotta look harder, because if you look harder, you'll see something that you did not see with your natural eye. And wouldn't you know that when he learned how to look beyond what he could see, he saw the thing that was always there. He just couldn't see it at first. Let me help y'all, because I'm preaching better than y'all talking to me. If you learn how to look beyond what you can see, you'll see what's been there the whole time that you just didn't know how to look for. The text says there is a difference between seeing and looking. Lord have mercy. It's two totally different Greek words. To see is involuntary. You can't control what you see. You can't control the trouble that's in your face. But to look means you choose to fix your gaze beyond what's in your face. Let me try to help you. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff that you've seen. I know you've seen some bad days. I know you've seen some lonely nights. I know you've seen some lack in your finances. I know you've seen injustice and inequality. I know you've seen them fools acting crazy on Capitol Hill. I know you've seen police officers kill people unjustly. I know you've seen trouble on your job. I know you've seen trouble in your home. I know you've seen betrayal and heartbreak. And I know it's in your face and you cannot avoid the experience. But here's what I'm trying to tell you. Even though you can't control the stuff that you see, you can control what you choose to look for. You can control where your gaze is. You can control where your perspective is. And in spite of what's in my face, I will look to the hills from which cometh my help, knowing all of my help. I wish I had time to call the roll. And I got to get to these 2 points so I can take my seat. But I can see Moses standing in front of a Red Sea with mountains on both sides and with an army behind him. But he said, stand still and you're going to see the salvation of the Lord, because I ain't looking at the obstacle. I'm looking for the promise. And I can't avoid the obstacle, but I do know what God said. And if he said it, he's going. To see is involuntary. What you look for is a choice. These two Greek words are important because the Greek word for see is literally, this Greek word used is literally the word that means what you can see with your natural eyes. Here's the problem with your natural eyes. Some of y'all know it. Listen to me. The problem with your natural eyes is that they are limited. Watch this. Listen to me close. If we be honest, sometimes with age, they get more and more limited. Not just with age. Let your head hurt the wrong way. Let there be a certain amount of pain in the right spot. It will affect your ability to see. And Paul is saying the problem with trying to use natural eyes for spiritual things is that natural eyes are too limited to see what God's really doing. Because you're hurting, you can't see. Says that this word see is a Greek word that literally means the things that you can see with your natural eyes. But the Greek word for look is to gaze beyond. Y'all ever been at work, supposed to be working, and somehow or another you got your little computer screen going, and before you know it, it's like you're looking at it, but you ain't really looking at it. Somehow or another your attention has started to slip from what you can see to gaze at what feels like nothing in the air. That word in the Greek is literally to have something in your face, but to somehow or another gaze and think upon what's not right in front of you. That's what the Greek word to look means in the text. And Paul says, you got trouble in your face, affliction that you see, but you have the capacity to look beyond it for something that you cannot see. Am I making sense of the text? We look not at the things which are seen, Here's what's seen: affliction and trouble and turmoil and trouble on every side and despair and all this stuff is stuff we see, but we look past it to see what we can't see. Here's the shout of the text, and I'm done. There are two promises. Here's why we got to have a healthy perspective. Here's why you got to condition yourself to look beyond it. Here's why you got to have what my daddy called a heavenly handle on hardship. Here's why you got to have better spiritual perspective and trust that it is God's business and God is using the affliction to work for you and produce glory for you. Here's why you got to do it. You got to do it because what you see is temporary. Okay. All right. You can trust that the affliction is producing glory. You can do all that because what we see is temporary. I think this is about Paul writes this promise based on history. There are two promises in the text. The first one is what you can see is temporary. And I think Paul writes this promise based on history. Because if you know anything about Paul's life and journey, Paul's been through a whole lot. Some would say that since Paul's been following Jesus, his life looks worse than it used to look before. Paul was riding, well paid and blessed by the religious leaders to round up these followers of Jesus, followers of the way, persecute them, throw them in jail. He was on the way to political and religious hierarchy. I mean, he's the future high priest. He's on his way. They love him. He's that guy. And then a light knocks him from his horse. Saul, why are you persecuting me? Turns his life over to the Lord Jesus, and the same people who used to celebrate him became the people who would persecute him. Instantaneously, Paul goes from beloved to opposed. Instantaneously. He doesn't just lose friends, he loses money, he loses influence. But somehow or another, when you keep reading, the same influence he lost with one group, eventually he found with another. Paul traveling around trying to preach this message of Jesus, this message of hope, and would be put out of the temple only to be embraced in somebody's house. Because when one somebody rejected him, a community embraced him. Paul would say himself, as he was waiting on gifts that would help him financially, Paul would say himself in Philippians, I've learned how to have a whole bunch, and I've learned how to have nothing at all. Whatever state I'm in, I've learned how to be content. As a matter of fact, what I've discovered is even if people don't give me stuff to do stuff, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Because even when people won't give me money, Jesus will give me strength. And sometimes when the bills are due, I can't find the money, but then out of the blue, somebody will send some, because what I can see is temporary. And if Paul knew anything about temporary trouble, if anybody knew it was Paul who was stoned and left for dead, and then a few minutes later gets up and walks back into the same city like a natural man, because even pain is temporary and purpose lasts forever. I need y'all to see what I'm trying to tell you. The reason why Paul can confidently say that this stuff you see is temporary is because his whole life was a testimony that trouble don't last That's all I'm trying to get somebody to catch so we can get out of here. I know it hurts right now, but there's a reason why Paul could call it momentary affliction, because sooner or later the moment's gonna pass, and when the moment passes, won't God show up and turn it around and cause it to work together for your good and for his glory? What you see is temporary. And some of y'all ought to have enough history with God to know this ain't the first time you've had to endure some affliction. This ain't the first time the bill's been due. This ain't the first time you got a bad doctor's report. This ain't the first time they getting on your nerves at work. This ain't the first time you've been lied on. This ain't the first time your heart's been broken. This ain't the first time you've been confused. But if you got history with God, you can help me preach this point and say, I know it don't last forever, because just when I needed him to, he showed up and was a present help in trouble. Do I have a couple witnesses who will help me preach? As a matter of fact, give me 9 witnesses and I'll make number 10 who will say trouble don't last always. Sooner or later, God will step in. And when he step in, won't he turn that thing around in your favor? When he steps in, won't he make that thing work out so that he gets the glory and you come out better than you walked in it? I know it hurts. I know it hurts. But the text says it is momentary. Lord have mercy. It is but for a moment. Who you think you're talking to? Preacher, you don't know how long I've been dealing with it. You don't know how bad it's been. Well, when you compare it to eternity, it can't be as long as you think, because eternity is longer than your suffering. And eventually there will be a glory after this. Promise number one. Promise number one. What you see, what you've endured, the affliction that you're struggling with, it don't feel good, but it's temporary. It is momentary. So I need to encourage somebody, lean in close. Don't you dare make a permanent decision in a temporary season. The Spirit of God is telling me I need to lean into this a little bit tighter, so let me do it. Don't you throw in the towel and miss eternal promise because of some temporary pain. You don't get to quit because you don't like it today. And if we would be honest, listen to me. A lot of us have made the mistake of forfeiting promise because of a momentary season. I know it's hard, but you got to stand up straight, stick your chest out, hold your head up, and believe that the God who brought you to it is strong enough to pull you through it. I wish I really want to move on, but I need to tell somebody, you don't get to give up, because eventually God's going to step in and turn that thing around just in the nick of time, because his anger is for a moment, but his favor is for life. Weeping may endure for it. Hunch your neighbor on the shoulder, but hey, you know the scripture don't end there. I need you to grab your ear like a good Baptist preacher and say it like you feel it. Joy comes in the morning. I got one more point in this sermon, but I feel my soul getting happy. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, you don't know how long I've been crying about this thing. You don't know how long this thing's been breaking me down. You don't know how bad it's been for me, but I feel something turning in my spirit late in the midnight hour. God. All right, I'm sorry. Can y'all help me preach to a neighbor so we can get out of here? My soul is getting happy. But tap a neighbor on the shoulder, say, hey neighbor, I don't know how bad it's been, and I don't know how long you've been in it, but I got good news for you. Joy is coming in the morning. As a matter of fact, look at your watch. It's morning time. And joy is here. Did y'all hear what I said? I'm not telling you what I can see. I see what I can't see. And if you don't see it before you see it, you'll never see it. Tell somebody, I see the mornings here. So you can turn your mourning into dancing. Turn your sorrow into joy. Now tell them like you feel it. Joy! 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 I really got to get to this other point. But I feel the Spirit of the Lord saying somebody just need to know joy is here now. Joy is here now. I know it's been down, and I know you can't even feel it. But this the thing I love about God. God don't need you to feel it for it to be done. He can send joy, and even if you don't feel it, you can have to tell somebody, I got it, because he said I got it. All right. Let me move. I'm getting happy and I can't. Okay, listen. Told y'all there's two promises in the text. Promise number one is based on history. What we see is temporary. But promise number two is based on hope. What we cannot see is eternal. Promise number one is trouble fades. Promise number two is glory don't. Let me tell y'all how good God is. God is so good that he can take a temporary thing and produce a permanent glory. God can take passing trouble and cause it to create this eternal weight. Look at the comparative analysis of the two verses. For our momentary light affliction is working for us to produce a far exceeding weight of glory that is eternal. Do y'all see it in these verses? Let me try it again, because y'all not responding like you see it. This momentary affliction, meaning it is going to change, is also light. Now you're saying, now wait a minute, preacher. Paul lying. He lying because ain't no way this heaviness I'm feeling, it can't be light. You don't know, I'm struggling to sleep. Hair falling all out. Can't get my body to act right. Bags under my eyes. Stressing every time my head hit the pillow. Mind going crazy. Now I'm dealing with anxiety, living in the future, trying to figure out what's going to happen. And I got enough depression because I'm living in the past because of what happened to me. And now I'm dealing with all of it at the same time. Who does Paul think he is to tell me that it's light? Well, here's the thing about weight. Weight is comparative. Okay, all right. Meaning, to determine whether or not something is light or heavy, you have to have something else to compare it to. So a thing may feel heavy in a vacuum, but when you compare it, it cannot be compared. Here it is. Let me help you out this way. The picture that Paul is painting in the Greek is a picture of the scales of justice that you see at the courthouse, where y'all seen the picture where they say Lady Justice is holding the scales and they are trying to balance out the scales. What Paul is saying is the scale between affliction and glory ain't a balanced one. That if you load up all the affliction in your life, all the hell you've been through, all the stuff you're going through now, all the lack in your life, all the abandonment and betrayal, all the depression and anxiety, all of the ways you can't sleep, if you put all of it on the scale and then you put glory on the other side of it, the glory's so heavy that it'll make all the hell look like. 2 or 3 y'all should have said, that's my kind of promise right there. Did y'all hear what I came to tell you? That it is producing a glory for you that is way heavier and way weightier than the hell you've been through. That's why even in spite of the enemy trying to push you down, you can lift up your hands, because there is a weight of glory that's stronger than the weight of depression. I feel like preaching now. There's a weight of glory that's stronger than the weight of anxiety. There's a weight of glory stronger than the weight of lack. Did y'all hear what I said? I'm sorry, I got to take this exit ramp. I got more to say. We'll try it again later. I got to get off of this. But tell your neighbor, the reason why I got hope is because there's a weight of glory that's stronger than everything that I'm going through right now. Look at your neighbor. Say, hey neighbor, I got to encourage you. You got some weight on you. You got some weight on you. But it ain't the weight of affliction. That weight is too light. When I look at you, I see the weight of glory on you. Because this thing that you're going through is only working for you to make you stronger, to make you better. Y'all ain't talking to nobody, so let me preach to me. The things that you're going through are only designed to get more glory out of you. So I thank God for the beating. I thank God for the crushing. I thank God for the pressing, because God will. Yes, he will. God will. I feel like preaching this thing. I said God will. God will. God will. Yes. Won't he make some weight out of it? Ain't he producing something in you? Can I encourage you and let you know, I know it's heavy right now, but there will be glory, and glory stronger than affliction. There will be glory, and glory stronger than grief. There will be glory, and glory stronger than anxiety. There will be glory, and it's stronger than depression. There will be glory, and it's stronger than lack. Is there anybody here who says, I still believe, in spite of how bad it feels, I still believe that God will? I said God will. Won't God do it? Be not dismayed. Whatever betide, I know you. Y'all help me prophesy to a neighbor so I can get out of here. Say, hey neighbor, I see the burden lifting and I see the glory falling. That was the wrong neighbor. If they didn't jump, that was the wrong neighbor. Say, hey neighbor, I see God lifting the burden, but he ain't taking something without replacing it. He's lifting the burden and dropping his glory. A weight of glory. The kavah, the weight of glory. Anybody want it?